G'day mate, how you going? Should you be shooting RAW? What does it mean to shoot in RAW? What's involved? Yeah, what benefits are there? Let's go take a look. Yeah guys, so just a pretty basic video, mainly for people new to photography or new to RAW. You might have heard of RAW. What does it even mean? What's involved? And what benefits are there? So yeah, basically what are we talking about? We're talking about a setting on our camera, aren't we? Most modern cameras will have an option to shoot RAW. This isn't opposed to shooting JPEG, or you can shoot RAW and JPEG of course. And basically all we mean is when we press the shutter button, the camera writes a RAW file, a different file than a JPEG file, to your memory card. So you stick your memory card in your computer and you've got this RAW file. So what does this even mean? So quickly, we all know what a JPEG is, or if you don't, you might be fairly new to photography and computing. You probably use JPEG files a lot. Just about everyone has. Every time you upload a picture to Facebook, or chuck a few pictures on a memory stick to give to a mate or take to a printer, most likely you're using JPEG. It's just a industry-wide standard for image files, I guess. Been around since computers have been popular, really. All right, so what is a RAW file? Well, as I said, it's a file on your memory stick. Your camera will be writing it to your memory stick. Sometimes they're known as a digital negative. Just like in the old days, you'd have your negatives and you'd create prints from your negatives. The negative was normally a bit better quality than the print one. It had a bit more information in it, I guess, a bit more detail or whatever. The RAW file is similar in that way, I guess. So one thing to keep in mind when we press the shutter on our camera and we take a picture of a scene, that JPEG file doesn't actually encapsulate all the information or all the data that the camera captured when you press that shutter button. So yeah, basically, you probably guessed it, shooting RAW just enables you to access some of that information that was thrown away when the JPEG was created. And like I say, you're still going to create a JPEG at the end of it most likely, but you have a bit more control about what information goes into that JPEG. Alright guys, what I thought I might do is head down the beach and get a few sunset photos. When the sun drops a bit, she's still a bit high. And I'll be able to get some images just to show you the benefits of RAW versus JPEG. I'll configure my camera to shoot both at once. Most cameras that shoot RAW, probably all of them, do actually have an option to shoot both. So every time you press the shutter button, you'll save a RAW and a JPEG file on your memory card. And the bonus of that is it's the same scene, it's the same exposure, same instant you press the button. And yeah, we'll have two files we can actually directly compare. And I think that'll be useful just for you to see what's required, what's involved processing the RAW, what the difference is, what you can expect out of it. All right, let's wait for sunset. We'll get down to the beach. Sounds good. Might get some fish and chips. All right guys, so yeah, I'm back in the office. Yeah, it wasn't a bad evening. It's quite nice. The sunset wasn't too shabby at all. Didn't get any fish and chips unfortunately, but never mind. So yeah, I've picked a few images from the shoot. As you can see, we've got some JPEG files and we've got these other funny files, and as you probably guessed, yeah, they're RAW files. Yeah, you'll see they have the same file name except for the file name extension. So this is a .jpg and that's a .nef. One of the drawbacks of RAW files is that they're all different, that there's no industry standard, and they're even different for different models of cameras from the same manufacturer. So yeah, I use my Nikon Z7 mirrorless camera to take these photos. I've also got a Nikon D500 for instance. That will be a .nef file as well, but it'll actually be different. Another disadvantage of RAW files is that they're 2.5 times bigger on average, and that depends on certain settings we won't get into. Now these file sizes might seem really big, even for the JPEGs. I've got nearly 20 meg JPEGs there. Yeah, the Nikon Z7 I'm using is a 46 megapixel camera, so yeah, don't be too alarmed at that. That ratio between the RAW file and the JPEG size is pretty typical really. They're going to be a lot bigger, so you're going to fill up your memory cards quicker and your hard drives quicker. But yeah, in these days I guess memory cards and hard drives are a lot cheaper, and I think you can manage it fairly easily. Alright, well I think it's time to import these files into Lightroom, which is the RAW processing program that I use. As mentioned, there are many different applications, free ones and paid ones. Adobe Lightroom is one of the more popular ones, and it's really easy to use. So we'll import this into Lightroom and let's have a close look at these RAWs and these JPEGs and yeah, see how they're different and how we work with them.
Okay, so in Adobe Lightroom, I've imported these images, these 4 files, 2 of each scene or picture that we actually took, and obviously, yeah, a JPEG version and a RAW version of each image. You'd normally, import these directly from your camera or from your memory card. I just put them on the desktop first, just to show you the differences in file size. Let's see what the differences are between these files. I guess at first glance they look pretty similar, don't they? So yeah, the JPEG, the RAW, the JPEG, the RAW. So I guess the first point to make, if we are just happy to have our images out of camera as is, that's what we're going to get. That's something we can share. We've been over this. We can hand that to a friend. We can upload it to Facebook. We can take it to a printer. You might notice, this is a fairly contrasty image. Often sunset scenes at the beach aren't they? You've got this dark foreground and quite bright background. I guess the problem is when we took this photo, we had to decide what we wanted to expose for. I guess we could have exposed for the foreground, and then the background's blown out, isn't it? We exposed for the background, get that beautiful clouds, and the foreground's even darker. So we sort of went somewhere in between. We got a bit of both, I guess, didn't we? Now we can actually edit this JPEG file and get a bit more out of it. We can lift the shadows out a bit. We can maybe bring the highlights down a bit. And I'm going to do this really quickly. Sorry, this isn't a video tutorial about editing files. It's really just wanting to quickly get to a point where we can just see the difference. And look, this is looking pretty good, isn't it? We'll just edit this to taste quickly. Add a bit of saturation maybe. So there's a JPEG file with very little editing. All right, let's go back to our library. So that's that JPEG now edited. So this is the RAW file unedited. We go into this, and we'll also edit this now just to taste. So it's not going to be exactly the same. I'm just going to do it to taste. But they are actually different files, even though they're the same scene. Bring that shadows out, drop the highlights down a bit. It's not a scientific comparison or anything like that, don't get me wrong. A bit heavy on the saturation there, but yeah, we won't spend too much time on this. All right, so let's just say that's our edit for now. Now, one thing we can do with Lightroom, I'll go back to the grid view. We can actually select 2 photos, shift select and press the C key, and we get a comparison of them now. Now you can probably see a bit of difference already in this zoomed out view. So we have the JPEG on the left and the RAW file on the right. Cool thing of this comparison thing, I can zoom in somewhere now. And again, this is very unscientific. We could have spent a bit more time processing these. We didn't do any noise reduction, although I'm shooting at ISO 80, as you'll see there. So there shouldn't be much noise to speak of. Even in our really quick edit, we can see the difference in our shadows. Graduation here between the lights and darks. It's really showing quite a lot of detail in the shade. Where on the JPEG, we're getting some pretty ugly noise, very muddy sort of darks, aren't we? Not a lot of detail. The bright areas aren't too bad, I guess. So just quickly, you're seeing some differences in there, aren't you? Look at the details in these shadows. I guess the bigger point to make is, look, we've spent time editing this JPEG to get it close to this. If we're editing stuff anyway, we're not taking advantage of the main advantage of shooting JPEG, and that's not having to edit files, is it? It's being able to just share files immediately. We're chucking them on the computer and editing them anyway. Why not just shoot RAW? Well, I guess there's a couple of reasons still. RAWs take up a little bit more space. You need software to be able to edit RAWs. So yeah, hopefully that's just a quick example there. Just some of the detail. Look at all the different colors we're getting in this RAW file compared to that JPEG file. All right, let's just quickly go to the other image I've got there. And this is actually me and my wife. So this is a JPEG again. Out of camera, if we're happy with that, probably not, are we? That's what we're going to get out of camera. We expose for a bit more, and we do this out of camera perhaps. So you can see our features there now, but yeah, what's the point? Where's the sunset gone? It's all blown out, hasn't it? So again, we can edit our JPEG images. We'll just lift the shadows, we'll bring the highlights down a bit, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We'll go to the RAW version of this now. We'll do the same. We'll lift the shadows. We'll bring the highlights down a bit. Let's just compare these quickly. Very quick edit, this one obviously. We'll highlight these 2, press the C key. And one thing I can say is, the color balance in the RAW on the right is a lot more accurate. This is the color of my wife's shirt, for example. We see a bit of noise. As I said, this is very unscientific. You'd normally do a bit of noise reduction before editing, so we probably highlighted the noise a bit more there. Also, worthy of note too is your in-camera settings for JPEGs do have some effect too. So there might have been some noise reduction on the JPEG. There probably was, depending on how your camera is configured. There'd be sharpening. So with that in mind, another important aspect of RAW files, and something to be aware of, is that idea of it being a digital negative. But yeah, think of it as our master file. We can always go back to it, make changes. It is just that raw data, and we might want to make a black and white. We might want to edit it differently. In the future, noise reduction technologies might improve and all sorts of stuff. So we might be able to do more with this image. Where with a JPEG file, everything's pretty much written into the pixels in it. A good example of this is white balance. When we shoot a JPEG image, the camera has to choose a white balance, and it's all your normal ones. Whether it's daylight or cloudy, you can set it color temperature to what you want. White balance does work pretty well on cameras these days, doesn't it? I'll go back to as shot for this one. But the beauty of a RAW file is the white balance isn't applied to the pixels like it is with a JPEG image. It's Adobe RAW in this instance has applied a default white balance to it, which is the one the camera chose, so it's as shot. But that's not actually ingrained into the pixels, where with a JPEG it is. So if we wanted to change the color balance or white balance of an image, we are actually just trying to work with those pixels that have it embedded in it. So we're not going to get really good results. Same for sharpening, noise reduction, and a host of other factors we can edit our images with. For example, with a JPEG, if there's been in-camera sharpening, well, that's what we're stuck with. And if we want to try and get a bit more of the image, that sharpening might enhance noise. So of all these different attributes that we adjust on our images, the beautiful RAW file is that they are just on top of the file. They're not changing the file. So applications like Adobe Lightroom, they're called non-destructive image editors, and basically that means is Lightroom has a link to this file, and so it references that original file, but doesn't actually change the file itself. All it does is it has a list of actions that you've applied to the file. So I can go back to these actions we did, and none of them are hard written into the actual file. So I guess it's all about priorities in our photography, isn't it? Is it worth our extra time and effort shooting RAW, just to get the most out of our photography? Every time we take an image, are we looking for the maximum quality, or is ease of use more important?
All right, so some of you might have been thinking, we still don't have a file we can share. We've edited this beautiful sunset, we've tweaked this RAW file, so what? We don't have a file that we can share still. So of course there is one extra step, isn't there? We need to go to our RAW editor of choice, Adobe Lightroom in this instance, and export it. So we have this digital negative, we've adjusted it, and we just export it as a JPEG now. And basically, that's the process. We could go back to the RAW file and tweak it a bit more, change a few things, and just export it again. Basically, the idea is we have this RAW file as the master copy. Now I've got to spend a little bit more time editing this. I can see a little bit of sensor dust there, for example. But yeah, it's all just doing a quick edit just to show the difference.
Yeah, no right or wrong. I've had some really good photographers on forums and everything tell me they only shoot JPEG. So personally, I do shoot RAW pretty much exclusively, and very rarely I will shoot JPEG, and that'll just be I'm not too worried about the end result. It's just a quick recording of an event, taking a few snaps. But yeah, that's just my personal view. But yeah, hopefully this video, if nothing else, it did just demonstrate some differences between shooting RAW and JPEG, a little bit about what's involved and what you can expect in terms of results. And look, this isn't a technical video at all. If you're hoping to get a bit more out of it, how to process RAW files, how to use Adobe Lightroom, for example, it's not meant for that. It really is just a quick video and just showing you the differences between RAW and JPEG. Yeah, please subscribe. Hit the bell to see future videos coming out. And I'll certainly be putting out videos on how to process images. I did some very quick processing here. Just more technical aspects of shooting RAW and just photography in general. Subscribe and leave any comments. I'd really appreciate that, and I'll always respond to comments. Right guys, thanks heaps, I'll catch you next time. Cheers.